I think these past few hours that we've spent here has undeniably been quite a rich experience. The panelists, the contribution, the quality, a high quality of discussion and debate augurs well going forward. Undeniably, that kind of debate that we've had tonight, these are the kinds of debates that we had in the dark and turbulent days of apartheid. That intellectual exchange, that discourse, richly played quite a significant role in the growth and development of the Congress movement in particular. And I think all of us, or many of us that are here, cut our teeth in the Congress movement. But you talk about salvation. You know, for us, the Freedom Charter remained the beacon, the hope for a future non-racial, democratic South Africa. There was this mantra, you know, and as young activists, we learned all those clauses of the Charter, that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, that all national groups shall enjoy equal rights, that there shall be free and compulsory education for all, that the doors of learning and culture shall be open. So the South African Constitution, which is premised on the Freedom Charter, which was adopted on the 26th of June 1955, a long time ago, are yet to be realized. So the struggle really and essentially took a form and shape post-1994 where the ideals or the principles or the values of the Charter were all but forgotten. That the accumulation of private wealth, this crass materialistic culture, had permeated itself in a way that the most marginalized, the poor, the vulnerable in an unequal society face the worst brunt of oppression and exploitation. 23 years after democracy. And that continues to, notwithstanding the legislation that we have, the protection that we have, the purchasing power of labor continues to be grossly exploited. And that our preoccupation as a party, as a ruling governing party, has been to fight personal battles. That they indeed, and we've agreed that there is no ideological divide between the so-called factions. Slated politics which emerged, and some would argue since 1994, I was there in the early 90s in the Southern Natal Conference, where one of the speakers, I think, alluded to three factions, you know, one represented by Eric Wala, the other by Zuma and Jeff Hadebe. I'm not too sure, you know, whether they existed in the way we see the kind of factions, you know, now post-apartheid South Africa. Obviously, there were differences of opinion. We agreed to disagree. That culture of democratic participation and debate was extremely, extremely high. We coalesced as organs of civil society with the political movement to create powerful organs of civil society that in fact built communities and built relationships across national groups. On the one hand, we had JORAC, the Joint Rent Action Committee, that brought communities who were fighting against high rentals in the black townships, whilst the Durban Housing Action Committee mobilized Indian and colored comrades. And we've seen how these structures, MDM structures, interface, work together, the kind of non-racial trajectory that the Freedom Charter talks about. We saw that, we witnessed that pre-1994. I don't think that the leadership, the movement had paid much attention to furthering that non-racial project, that it simply hasn't worked, that government is spending millions on social cohesion conferences, millions, literally millions. And we still remain very much apart, polarized, alienated from each other. So we have not made any advances towards that non-racial, non-sexist, democratic South Africa, notwithstanding the plethora of legislation that we have in our statute books. But that's a fundamental reality. When we look at education itself, the Charter talks about free and compulsory education. There was a huge battle, you and cry, but how free is free education? Okay? When we talk about there shall be security and comfort for all, I mean, we're far from closing that huge gap that exists between those who have housing in particular and those who continue to live in abject poverty and squalor in our informal settlements, in the gendals. We're talking about dignity here when the right to dignity really is impaired when you don't have clean, flushable toilets. The right of dignity is impaired when you can't shit with dignity. That's how bad it is. 23 years. And that's the reality, that you can't live in peace and security in a community where a neighboring community, poor, struggling to find jobs, where the unemployment is so high that the prevalence of crime, the prevalence of social ills, etc., will continue. So, as I said earlier, it's back to basics. It's to mobilize, to organize, to empower people at a local level and get government and our politicians to account. I strongly believe in servant leadership. Okay? That those members of parliament, the premiers, etc., they're my servant, I'm the master. And what has happened and how the politics have evolved in a way in which whenever we see an MP, an MEC, we do this, etc. The converse should happen, And the kind of respect that we, as the elected, as the voters, we're not accorded the kind of dignity and respect. So I want to compliment the quality of discussion and debate, and I think we need to thank Xolani Benedict Dube for bringing us again together to enrich us with this experience, this interaction, this discourse between ourselves, because I think it augurs well for a healthy, thriving democracy. I thank you.